Bonaire is not your typical Caribbean island. Here you'll find unique cuisine, welcoming wildlife, a coral reef that supports sea life like you've never seen, and a collision of cultures that all create the perfect recipe for a really memorable adventure that we want to share with you.
Not far from the coast of Venezuela is a region called the Dutch Caribbean, a small chain of the ABC Islands, including Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao.
The island of Bonaire has the smallest population of the ABC Islands with just about 19,000 people, but when the cruise ships come to town, it comes alive.
The swell of tourists from the cruise ships means big money for this tiny island with a bustling marketplace. The trinkets you'll find, everything from bath salts to pink flamingo sugar bowls, represent just a sampling of what Bonaire has to offer beyond its port.
Every time there is a ship, there is a boat, a cruise ship, we are here to sell our product.
The cross-cultural charm of the island is evident from its cuisine. Smoothies and churros are just some of the many Caribbean treats tourists clamor for.
Churros Bonaireano. We are selling the best churros of the whole world.
But to really sample Bonaire's variety, you can head to the local supermarket. Here at the Vandentwiel, the prices are in American dollars, but the product names are mostly in Dutch. Some labels also include papiamentu, a local dialect that kind of sounds like a Creole Spanish. Of course, being a state of the Netherlands means good cheese is a must, and there's no shortage of Gouda. In Bonaire, you'll find plenty to satisfy your sweet tooth. Just feast your eyes on this dessert case at a local cafe. From tropical cakes and tarts to homemade gelato, here you'll find crepes stacked high with toppings, from sweet to savory. If you're feeling especially adventurous though, head out to the beach and visit one of the more interesting food trucks, serving up hamburgers and lionfish. This is one of the only places in the world where you'll find lionfish on the menu. It's an invasive species, which means it preys on other natural sea life. That makes it a favorite among scuba divers to hunt and have for dinner.
I hunted a lionfish, I filleted it, ran it through a food processor with a little bit of egg and breadcrumbs, just kind of like you would do like a meatloaf, right? All your seasoning and everything together, form it into a patty, throw it in a pan with a little bit of butter.
In Bonaire, you'll never know who you'll run into in the water. The island of Bonaire is not typically known for its white sandy beaches, but rather the clear water, making it an ideal location for deep diving, windsurfing, and of course snorkeling to soak up the fun. This is one of the best places in the world for diving and other water sports, partly because all the rocky terrain you see is part of a massive coral reef. While the water is crystal clear and shallow on the shoreline, you don't have to venture far out before you hit the shelf of the reef, and that means a sudden, deep drop.
You don't need a boat. I mean, you can do boat dives, but basically you grab a tank, you grab your dive gear, drive off to one of the 84 dive spots, and just jump in the water somewhere on the shore.
One of those dive spots is a place called 1,000 Steps. No, there aren't that many, but it can feel like it on a hot, sunny afternoon. It's also a great place to get pictures of the rocky cliffs that line the shore. The steps will take you right down to the water. Just pack your dive gear, and you're all set. But if diving's not your thing, try windsurfing or kiteboarding. Just don't expect to get too comfy in the sand. Most of the beaches here are covered in coral. Piles of it, in fact.
While underwater adventures may lure tourists, you'll find plenty of treasures inland as well. Like the Caribbean parakeet, also known as the brown-throated parakeet. The birds nest in termite mounds on tree trunks, and you can hear them squawking all over the island. A much quieter bird is the flamingo, also native to Bonaire. They actually develop their pink coloring from the sea salt algae they eat over time. The youngest ones are still mostly white. It is not uncommon to find flocks of them feasting. At the donkey sanctuary, more than 700 hungry residents welcome visitors during a driving tour. If you park and step out, they'll gladly greet you up close for a carrot. Almost too friendly. Don't be surprised if you get swarmed. They love the attention they get from tourists and the personal care they receive from staff with a healthy supply of fresh water and food. Most were brought here to the safe haven as adults, but then there are babies, like this little guy, born here just a few months ago. Outside the sanctuary, hundreds more donkeys roam freely around the island. They're not native to Bonaire, but they've been here almost as long as humans. Spaniards who settled on the island in the early 1500s brought donkeys and goats. Eventually, they realized the rocky, dry terrain isn't suitable for farming. Ultimately, they deemed the land useless and basically abandoned the island.
When the Netherlands was at war with Spain in the 1600s, they had to find a new source of salt.
and they found this naturally occurring salt process. Today, they produce nearly 500,000 tons of it annually. The process is created through solar and wind power. Salt water is pushed into a series of channels and ponds. Over time, the water becomes more concentrated and salinic. The final product is placed into piles and then loaded onto ships. It's Bonaire's most important export. Today, the American company that operates the facility, Cargill, utilizes conveyor belts to load the ships. But years ago, long before Cargill and modern technology, slaves were used to carry the bags of salt by hand. These slave huts were built in 1850 to house the workers who slept near the salt ponds. The huts, that sit right on the rocky beaches between the ponds and the ocean, have been carefully preserved and remain a popular spot for historians and tourists alike. The salt ponds themselves also attract tourists who marvel at the huge white mounts of salt, the colorful displays of pink water, and all the fluffy clouds of foam. That's just a harmless byproduct from the salt production. It blows around the shoreline like bubbles in the wind.
Coincidentally, it's the salt water that makes this island such an ideal location for the transmission of radio signals. Transworld Radio is the largest Christian media organization in the world, and Bonaire is its central broadcasting headquarters.
That tower that you see sticking in the air, that's only half of the antenna. The other half of the antenna is what we call the ground plane. And we actually have copper wires radiating out from the base of the antenna, which form the ground plane. And when the ground is really conductive, like the salt flats out there, that just adds to the effect. And then it's also true that for some reason, and I don't know the reason, the radio signal travels across water really well, so it can zoom all the way to Cuba without really degrading much at all.
The most powerful station in the Western Hemisphere, Transworld Radio's mission is spreading hope and faith across the globe.
Voor meer woorden en muziek dat je geloof versterkt en inspireert.
By targeting parts of the world where Christianity is illegal and media is controlled by the government, TWR is able to reach listeners who often live in despair, from the most remote parts of the Amazon to areas under a dictatorship regime.
So people who cannot be reached otherwise, like Muslim women who are locked in their house, are not allowed to go outside. We can reach them. They can listen in secret, and it's also not on the internet. I mean, you can get arrested in Iran when you are visiting the wrong website, but radio is not traceable. So radio is a very strong medium to reach people who cannot be reached otherwise, and I think that's really the strong point of Transworld Radio.
And in places like Venezuela, where government unrest and rebellion have created crisis, TWR programming is crucial.
So when people are in crisis, it's very important that we are still able to reach them every morning and give them hope. But we also do practical stuff, like we say, how can you share food? How can you get healthy when there are no medicines? Where do you need to think of to stay healthy? And how can you cook? How can you bake a cake without eggs? It's possible. So we share recipes.
Transworld Radio is run by missionaries from around the world. Some move their families here from America, the Netherlands, or other parts of the Caribbean to take care of the day-to-day operations.
Welcome to Family Focus from the beautiful island of Bonaire. I'm Jason Helmholt. Good to have you with us.
In addition to their AM station, they also work with local shortwave FM stations around the world. It's a vast network of airwaves, and this arrangement allows them to air locally produced programs to better suit the needs of individual audiences.
230 languages, yes. And also the programs are being produced locally.
Last year, Transworld Radio increased their transmitter power from 100 kilowatts to 440 kilowatts, so it has a much stronger signal.
On 89.5, The Voice of Hope.
An operation of this scale is a labor of love that requires additional help. Every year, a group of communication students and professors from Waynesburg University travel from Pennsylvania to Bonaire to lend a helping hand. They assist with tough tasks, including lawn work and maintenance. There's always much to do, like tending to parking lots, which means shoveling rocks. Students are also needed for jobs like scraping off rust and old paint. The salty air really takes a toll on construction materials. But students also help the missionaries create new ways to promote TWR, including online branding, social media, and newsletters. Inside the studio, they write introductions and voice liners that will air all year long on the island and beyond. Their work here has helped broadcast hope to listeners who need it the most. The testimonials they receive from pastors and people in faraway lands is the reward they need to keep going. And locals love being home to such programming.
It is a joy to see many people together and so see the verse of the Bible say that many nations will worship and praise Him.
Faith is very important to Bonaireans. The centerpiece of each neighborhood is likely to be a Catholic church, but other Christian denominations are growing.
My name is Alex, and this is my wife Jasmine. with the pastor of this church, Bonaire Christian Fellowship, a church founded 26 years ago.
Pastor Alex Senchi and his wife Jasmine moved here from Curacao to start Bonaire Christian Fellowship Church more than 25 years ago. On Sundays, the chairs are full here, but today is a school day. The Senchis started their Christian preschool with just 11 children, but it's grown to more than 50. Outside, the kids climb, swing, and play. Indoors, they follow a strict curriculum that includes reading, math, and Bible lessons. Many children come here knowing only their native Papiamentu, but they quickly learn Dutch, and, eventually, English. The school books that Jasmine handmade include vocabulary words in the 3 languages. By the time students enter first grade, they're essentially fluent in all 3 of them.
Everything I did myself, making the books.
On Sundays, the gospel here is often read and translated in multiple languages so visitors feel welcome. The Senchis also help translate programming for Trans World Radio. It's a partnership they're proud of.
Many people doesn't know where Bonaire is at. But in God's kingdom, Bonaire is right there. Because for the last 45 years, TWR has been broadcasting from this little island to the nations. So people doesn't know exactly where it is, but they have heard about Bonaire.
The gospel teachings don't end on Sundays. Children learn religion every day at the Ardeen Chicoteen School, which literally means Garden of Children. And Jasmine believes she is really growing a bountiful crop of young Christians who may one day grow up to be pastors or missionaries themselves.
Like our slogan is Proverbs 22, verse 6. Teach your children the way that they should go, so when they grow older, they will not depart from it.
In the village outside their school, it's evident that island life on Bonaire is simple by American standards, with modest homes and cars. But with so many different cultural influences, there's plenty of variety to spice things up. Bonaire might just be the best kept secret of the Caribbean, but that's just part of its charm.
Where else can you find a cactus so close to the seashore? It's as though the desert and ocean join forces on the same horizon. A place where life lessons run as deep as the waters just a few hundred feet offshore.
I've been to many Caribbean places and islands, and Bonaire is absolute one of a kind if you look at how chill it is, how friendly the people are. Everybody greets each other in the car. Even it doesn't matter if you know each other. You're friendly to each other, and that is. I've never seen that anywhere else in the world.
This tiny island, a cross-cultural gift, reminding us that our world is meant to be explored, shared, and celebrated.